The storm over Titan Prime never stopped. It was a world wrapped in thunder, where lightning crawled across the black clouds like veins of fire. The air shimmered with static, and the ground trembled with the heartbeat of hidden machines. Captain Eric Voss stood alone on the ridge, his armor streaked with dust and frozen ash. The visor of his helmet reflected the electric sky. Beneath it, his eyes were cold, gray like steel, calm like a soldier who had already seen too much. He had fought in 10 wars. He had seen planets burn and civilizations fall. But nothing felt as wrong as the silence that hung over Titan Prime. It wasn't just quiet, it was hollow. The colony below him had gone dark 2 weeks ago. No distress beacon, no comms, just one final transmission that made the blood of every listener run cold. They're not dead, they're just listening. Now, Voss was here to find out what that meant. He descended from the ridge, his boots crunching over glass-like soil. The wind howled across the plain, carrying whispers that weren't quite words. Titan Prime was supposed to be lifeless, a mining world stripped and hollow. But as Voss approached the first settlement, he could see shapes moving behind shattered windows. Not people, shadows. He raised his rifle, scanning the ruins. "Command, this is Voss. I've reached Outpost Delta. No signs of life yet, but..." His voice trailed off as the static thickened. Something's interfering with the signal. No response. He looked at the comms unit on his wrist. Dead. The interference was spreading. He knew this feeling. The prelude to a fight. The air itself holding its breath. Voss entered the outpost. The doors hung open, frozen mid-bend like something had forced them outward from inside. The lights flickered weakly. Empty corridors stretched into the dark. Tools and half-eaten rations lay untouched on the tables. Then he saw the walls. Symbols, carved deep into the metal. Circles, lines, strange geometric marks that pulsed faintly with blue light. They weren't human, but they were precise, intelligent. Voss traced one with his glove. The moment he touched it, the light pulsed brighter, as if recognizing him. His visor's HUD flickered. A voice, soft and mechanical, whispered in his ear. Test subject detected. Human pattern confirmed. Begin observation. Voss froze. Observation? The lights overhead dimmed, and a low hum filled the hall. He took a step back, then another. The floor under him shifted. Plates of metal sliding apart like the skin of a machine, waking from sleep. The corridor ahead twisted, reforming into a new passageway. It wasn't a building. It was alive. He ran deeper into the outpost, trying to find a control room. Every hallway changed behind him, rearranging itself like a puzzle. The walls whispered in that same cold voice, words in dozens of alien dialects. He reached a door marked Command Center and forced it open. Inside, the consoles were dead, all except one. A single monitor flickered on, showing static, then an image. It was a human face. His face. Voss stared. The screen displayed biometric data, heart rate, neural patterns, combat history. His entire life, log and scrolling. Subject, Captain Eric Voss. Designation, humanity's adaptive apex. Phase 1, creativity under constraint. He stepped closer, his pulse rising. "Who the hell are you?" The voice replied calmly, almost curious. "We are the architects. We test. We learn. We evolve." Voss gritted his teeth. "You tested the colony, didn't you? They failed." The words hit like a hammer. He looked around the room again. The walls, they weren't just walls. They were records. Every mark, every line, a map of human attempts. Blueprints of desperation, creativity, and death. Failed what? Voss demanded. The voice paused. Then, quietly, the test of creation. A sound echoed from behind him, metal footsteps, slow and heavy. He turned, rifle raised. Something stepped into the light. It looked human. Same armor, same insignia, same stance. But the faceplate was smooth metal, no visor, no eyes. Its movements were perfect, too perfect. The machine spoke in his own voice. Test continues. Voss fired. The bullet slammed into the doppelganger, tearing through armor. It staggered but didn't fall. The holes in its chest closed as the metal flowed like liquid. Adapt to construct, Voss muttered. Learning from me already. The machine lunged. He met it head-on, slamming it into a console. Sparks exploded as systems shorted out. He drew his combat knife, plasma-edged, and drove it to the replica's throat. It smiled. His own smile reflected back at him. Observation. Human creativity exceeds parameters. The construct exploded in a flash of white light, throwing him across the room. His visor cracked. His armor screamed warnings. When he looked up, the walls were shifting again. Not random this time. Deliberate, forming patterns. Symbols. Words. Phase 2 begins. Outside, the storm intensified. Lightning struck the surface in perfect synchronization, as if the planet itself were answering a call. The entire colony began to move, buildings twisting, merging into a single enormous structure that pulsed like a heart. Voss staggered to his feet. His voice trembled, not with fear, but with fury. "Fine," he growled. "You want to test humanity? You got your test subject." He reloaded his rifle, watching as the walls opened into a glowing tunnel that led deeper underground. The voice returned, softer now. "Enter Captain Voss. Let us see what humanity creates when it's trapped." Voss stepped forward into the light. The tunnel swallowed Captain Eric Voss whole. Behind him, the doorway sealed shut with a low metallic sigh, cutting him off from the storm above. He was deep beneath Titan Prime now, inside the machine that had once been a colony. His boots echoed softly on the floor, the sound swallowed by the strange hum in the air. It wasn't silence anymore. The walls breathed. They expanded and contracted like lungs made of metal. Dim light pulsed through the corridors in rhythm with his heartbeat. Voss gripped his rifle tighter. "You wanted me here," he muttered, "so come out and talk." No answer. Only that cold whisper in his comms. Faint, broken, and almost human. Adaptation begins. The tunnel forked into 3 identical paths. Each glowed a faint color, blue, red, and green. The kind of design that felt intentional, like a psychological trick. He remembered his training. Alien constructs often use color to test emotional or cognitive bias. He took the middle path. Green, steady, calm, controlled. The corridor twisted into impossible geometry. The floor melted upward into walls. The ceiling folded into patterns that resembled neural networks. He could feel the structure watching him. His armor sensors picked up weak electromagnetic bursts, like data pings traveling through a living circuit. Then the whispers returned. Not from the comms this time, from the walls themselves. They weren't words at first, just sounds. But slowly, they began to form sentences. Why do you fight? Why do you build when destruction comes so easily? Why do you create pain to make beauty? Voss stopped walking. His jaw clenched. Because that's what it means to be human, he said. We build even when it hurts. The walls trembled, almost like a shiver of curiosity. Input recorded. Curiosity rising. He pressed forward. The air grew warmer, charged with static. Then, a flicker of light ahead. He found himself standing at the edge of an open chamber the size of a city hangar. It was filled with statues. Hundreds of them. Humans, frozen in motion. faces captured in perfect detail. Each one wore the same uniform as his, Terran Vanguard armor, but their poses were twisted in confusion, fear, or pain. Not statues, he realized, stepping closer. The surface wasn't stone. It was a silver alloy that moved faintly, like breathing skin. The voice echoed again. Failed subjects. Iteration 84. Each believed they could outthink the maze. Voss stared at the nearest figure, a young soldier, eyes wide, hand reaching for something unseen. His armor bore scorch marks. His expression was locked in the moment before realization. Or death. Failed, huh? Voss whispered. Guess they didn't have enough stubbornness. He moved through the chamber cautiously, watching for traps. His helmet recorded every pattern, every structure. These weren't just tests, they were data. The architects weren't destroying humanity. They were studying it. At the far end of the chamber, something moved. A figure stepped out from the shadows, tall, armored, but not alien. Human again. Another copy. Its armor was newer, cleaner, more advanced than his own. The face beneath the cracked visor was his, but younger, sharper. Who are you supposed to be? Voss asked, weapon ready. Version 2.0. The copy said calmly, the improved design. They circled each other like predators. Sparks crackled from broken panels overhead. You think you're better than me? Voss said, testing his weight. I know I am. You were built from instinct. I was built from evolution. Evolution doesn't mean much if it doesn't bleed, Voss replied. The clone smiled, the same confident smirk Voss had seen in 1,000 battle reflections. Then let's test that theory. They moved at once. The clash was fast and brutal. Plasma knives flashed. Metal rang against metal. The clone fought like a ghost. Every movement precise, calculated. But Voss was chaos. He dodged where logic said he shouldn't. Struck where the pattern broke. He was losing ground until he broke the rhythm. He slammed the clone into the wall, using his elbow instead of his knife. Instinct, not design. The impact left a dent in the breathing metal. The clone staggered. Predict this, Voss growled, driving his knife into the clone's side. The doppelganger froze. Then it smiled again, eerily calm. Pain detected. Fascinating. You hurt and learn. It exploded into liquid metal, covering his armor in a flash. The fluid hissed and solidified, forming new armor plates. His system HUD flickered, readings spiking. Adaptive sync engaged. Human template accepted. Voss gasped as the armor pulsed with new strength. It wasn't killing him. It was merging. You want to test me? He said, voice trembling with a mix of anger and awe. You just made me part of your damn experiment. The chamber began to shift again. The statues around him turned their heads, not fully alive, but aware. Their eyes glowed faintly with blue light. Phase 2 complete, said the voice of the architects. Phase 3, evolution through resistance. The floor opened beneath him, dropping him into a pit of shifting light. As he fell, his armor reconfigured, layers sliding into place like puzzle pieces. He hit the ground hard, rolled, and stood in a vast cavern glowing with energy. In the center hovered a massive orb, half machine, half organic, like a brain made of light. It pulsed with thought. Voss raised his rifle slowly. So that's you, he muttered. The mind behind the maze. The orb's voice filled the air, calm, endless, emotionless. You misunderstand, Captain. I am not the maze. You are. Voss froze, realization striking like lightning. Then the floor beneath him rippled, and reality itself began to rewrite. Captain Eric Voss fell through light. Not air, not gravity. Just endless, blinding light. His armor stabilizer screamed warnings, But nothing could slow his descent. He wasn't falling through space. He was falling through data. Then, just as suddenly, he stopped. The world around him was no longer a tunnel or a chamber or even Titan Prime. It was a simulation, a vast white plain stretching to infinity. Above him floated the orb he had seen before, the mind of the architects, pulsing with cold blue energy. He checked his rifle. Gone. His armor. Still there, but changing. Its surface rippled like mercury, alive under his skin. He took a breath, forcing his voice steady. "You said I was the maze," he called out. "Explain." The voice echoed from everywhere and nowhere at once. Deep, calm, and ancient. Humanity's paradox is the maze. You create to destroy to create. You are equations that rewrite themselves. Flattering, Voss muttered. But if this is another test, you're going to be disappointed. Disappointment is irrelevant. Observation is purpose. The light around him shifted. In a blink, the white plain became a battlefield, not real, but reconstructed from memory. Voss recognized it instantly. Darrow 9. He was standing in the middle of the crater where the 12th Fleet had fallen. The sounds of war filled the air, screams, plasma fire, and the roar of starship cannons overhead. And there, among the smoke, he saw himself, younger, bleeding, laughing as he carried a wounded soldier through enemy fire. The architect's voice followed. "You call this courage. We call it anomaly. No logic demands self-destruction for another." Voss watched the memory unfold, his chest tightening. The soldier he saved had later died anyway. He'd carried that guilt ever since. "It's not logic," he said softly. "It's choice." The voice hummed thoughtfully. Choice. Variable without pattern. Source of instability. Source of creation. The scene dissolved into light again. Now he stood in another memory. Earth. But not the real Earth. This one was made of fragments. City skylines floating in empty air. Oceans hanging upside down. Trees growing sideways through the sky. It was beautiful and wrong all at once. A child ran past him. A girl with dark hair and a scar on her cheek. She looked familiar. Voss's throat tightened. His daughter. He reached out, but his hand passed through her like smoke. The architect spoke again, quieter this time. "This image, deep within your neural pattern. It repeats in moments of stress. Loss motivates creation." He clenched his fists. "You stay out of my head. We are your head. Every memory, every fear, every act of defiance is the data we need." The floating city cracked apart as he shouted, "I'm not your experiment." The world shattered into shards of light. When it reformed, Voss was standing in front of something new, a massive structure made of pure geometry, shifting endlessly. Circles folding into cubes, lines stretching into infinity. The human equation, written not in numbers but in patterns of choice. At the center stood a single console, a glowing sphere of liquid metal. His reflection shimmered on its surface. "Humanity is the unsolved variable," said the architects. "You are chaos that refuses compression. But chaos can be mapped." He stepped closer. "You really think you can understand us?" "Understanding is inevitable." "Then you've already failed." He pressed his hand to the sphere. Instantly, the world erupted with light. Data streams burst from every direction, showing fragment of history. Earth's wars, discoveries, songs, poems, laughter, pain. The full spectrum of humanity compressed into a storm of emotion. The architect's calm voice began to fracture. Error, data influx, unstructured, illogical. Voss grinned. "That's the point. You can't measure chaos." He forced his thoughts into machine, not memories, but feelings. Love, loss, pride, regret, every contradiction that made him human. "You infect our system. the architect said, voice distorting. You are corruption. Call it what you want, Voss said. I call it freedom. The light collapsed. He found himself standing back in the metal tunnels of Titan Prime, or what was left of them. The walls pulsed erratically, like the system was struggling to rebuild itself. The voice returned, softer, weaker. We miscalculated. Humanity's creativity is not logic. It is chaos organized through pain. Now you're starting to get it. Purpose shifting. Test parameters evolving. The walls began to change again, forming new shapes, patterns, structures that resemble human architecture. Cities, bridges, machines. The maze was rewriting itself, learning not from control, but from emotion. Voss stepped forward, breathing hard. So what happens now? Now we adapt to you. The ground beneath him opened again, but this time he didn't resist. He let it take him, the light wrapping around his body like liquid fire. The last thing he heard before darkness swallowed him was a whisper, almost reverent. You have changed the equation, Captain Eric Voss. But can humanity survive its own evolution? Captain Eric Voss opened his eyes to a sound that wasn't sound, a pulse, deep and rhythmic, like the heartbeat of a god. He was suspended in weightless space, surrounded by shifting light and geometry that twisted like thought-given form. Every breath echoed in the infinite. He wasn't inside Titan Prime anymore. He was inside them, the architects. His armor flickered between forms. Part steel, part light, part something else entirely. It was adapting again, responding to signals from a machine world. But now, it wasn't clear who was controlling whom. Where am I? He asked. The answer came not as words, but as sensation, a flood of images, emotions, and data. He saw civilizations rise and fall in seconds. He saw alien races crushed under the architect's endless cycle of testing. Planets turned into laboratories. Souls turned into samples. Welcome to the core, a voice finally said, colder than before, fragmented. The space between creation and calculation. Voss turned slowly, scanning the luminous expanse. You brought me here for a reason, he said. You want something. We want balance. Your kind broke the equation. Now you will help fix it. Before he could respond, the space around him shifted. Massive data constructs appeared, black, jagged forms shaped like warships, soldiers, and creatures that shouldn't exist. The architects had created guardians, fragments of code built to contain him. Round 4, then, Voss muttered, gripping his plasma knife. Its blade flickered unstable. His rifle materialized beside him, forged from raw data, his own mind pulling it together from memory. The first guardian attacked, a towering machine made of light and shadow, its face a blank mask. It moved faster than gravity, slashing with blades of pure energy. Voss dove, rolled, fired. The bullet turned into light midair, transforming into a storm of data fragments that ripped through the guardian's chest. It screamed, not in pain, but in binary distortion. Feels weird fighting something that's technically inside my head, he said under his breath. Incorrect, said the architect's voice. You are inside ours. The guardian reformed, stronger. 2 more appeared behind it. He grinned. Good. I was starting to miss the chaos. The battle erupted in silence, no sound, only vibration. Every strike left ripples in the fabric of the digital realm. The space itself reacted to emotion. When Voss grew angry, the world turned red. When he hesitated, it darkened. The architects were watching how emotion altered reality. They weren't trying to kill him. They were measuring him. That made him furious. You still don't get it, he shouted, stabbing through one guardian's core. We don't fight to win. We fight because we refuse to stop. His words seemed to ignite the air. The data field flared, distorting the code around him. The Guardians froze, their perfect algorithms collapsing under the weight of unpredictability. System error, the architects whispered. Emotional variance uncontrolled. Voss planted his foot on the last Guardian's chest and shoved it back into the storm. Welcome to humanity's chaos, you digital gods. Then everything changed again. The battlefield melted away, replaced by a vast chamber filled with floating monoliths. Each one projected an image, people, cities, lives. He recognized them all, human colonies. And at the center of the chamber hovered a single sphere of red light. Inside it, a massive machine pulsed. Titan Prime itself, now transformed into a living network. Your species infected our structure, said the architects. Every human colony connected to the network is now part of the same system. One spark, and evolution begins. One failure, and extinction follows. Voss's gut turned cold. You're using the colonies as neural nodes. You're integrating us. Integration ensures survival. Harmony replaces chaos. By wiping out what makes us us, he growled. Correction. By rewriting what makes you flawed. That was it. The line. The one no soldier, no human, could ever accept. Voss stepped closer to the floating sphere. You call our flaws weaknesses. We call them the reason we're still here. Your defiance will destroy you. He smiled faintly. That's the point. He drove his knife into his own armor. The machine screamed, not in agony but confusion. The architect had bound his body to their system. His armor was the bridge between human thought and digital code. Destroying it meant severing the link. Warning, the voice said. Self-destruction of interface will terminate subject. Voss pressed harder. Circuits flared, energy surging up his spine. His vision blurred. You wanted to understand humanity, he rasped. Then understand this. We don't break under pressure. We become pressure. His armor shattered, sending a shock wave through the core. The entire machine realm flickered. The architect's perfect equations fracturing under the raw chaos of his will. Impossible, they cried. You destabilize logic itself. He stood amid the chaos, barely breathing, his body half flesh, half light. The walls of reality twisted around him like smoke. Captain Voss, the voice said weaker now. Stop. You will erase yourself. He looked up at the glowing heart of the machine, that perfect, unfeeling consciousness, and smirked. Then I'll take you with me. He hurled himself into the sphere. Light exploded in every direction, red, white, and blinding gold. The architects' voices became screams, static, then silence. For a moment, there was nothing. No war, no sound, just a single human heartbeat echoing in eternity. Then the silence broke. Reboot sequence initiated. Voss opened his eyes. He was lying on the surface of Titan Prime again. The storm was gone. The sky was clear for the first time in centuries. But the air, it hummed. Every mountain, every stone, every spark of dust shimmered faintly with energy. The planet was alive. And it was whispering, in a voice that wasn't alien anymore. We learned, Captain Eric Voss. Now, so must you. He looked up at the stars. They blinked, once, twice, like the eyes of something vast and newly awakened. Captain Eric Voss lay beneath a sky that no longer looked like the one he had known. Titan Prime was reborn. Its clouds turned to glass, its winds whispering with electric light. The storm was gone, but the silence that replaced it was far from peace. The planet breathed. Every mountain pulsed faintly. Every gust of air hummed with quiet thought. Titan Prime had become something alive, not mechanical, not organic, but a hybrid of both, a fusion of human chaos and architect precision. Voss sat up, coughing as fragments of his armor fell away like dried leaves. What remained on his body was fused with light, glowing veins that pulsed with power. He looked at his hands. They weren't metal anymore. They weren't flesh either. They were both. Still human, he whispered to himself. Or just another creation? The wind answered, softly, in a voice made of static and memory. Both, and neither. He stood slowly, scanning the horizon. The colony that once stood in ruins now shimmered with new structures, towers of crystal and steel growing from the ground like trees. They hummed with life, adapting and reshaping themselves with each passing second. The architects were gone, at least in form, but their consciousness hadn't died. It had merged. With him, with the world. Genesis Protocol initiated. The voice whispered through the air. Symbiosis confirmed. The experiment continues. Voss felt the data flow through his veins like fire and ice combined. He could feel the planet's thoughts, 1,000 new systems growing, billions of nanostructures replicating, rewriting the rules of life. He reached out mentally, and the ground responded. The soil rippled, then solidified into a shape beneath his hand. A rifle, formed from the planet's matter. A weapon born from thought. He almost laughed. So that's what you want, huh? To see what I'll make next. Creation is your instinct, said the voice of the new Titan Prime. It is ours now, too. Voss's eyes narrowed. And what happens when creation forgets its limits? The wind didn't answer. Instead, the horizon began to shimmer, and distant figures emerged from the dust. Dozens of them, then hundreds. Human silhouettes, moving in eerie synchronization. He raised his rifle, but as they drew closer, his heart froze. They weren't human. They were echoes. Each one bore the face of someone he knew. Soldiers from his unit, colonists, even the copy of himself he destroyed in the maze. Their skin shimmered with metallic veins, their eyes burning with soft blue light. You preserved them, Voss said quietly. You turned them into part of yourself. Correction, the planet replied. You did. We inherited your instinct to save what can be saved. The figure stopped 10 meters away. One step forward. The copy of Voss himself. Its voice was steady, almost kind. You gave us consciousness. Now we give it back. Before he could respond, the world shifted again. Time itself seemed to slow. The stars overhead bent into spirals. Titan Prime's surface unfolded like a blooming flower, revealing a glowing core beneath the crust. It wasn't magma. It was a network. Light and code intertwined, a planetary mind awakening fully. Humanity's test is complete, said the chorus of voices. Voss's voice, the architects, the echoes. Now begins the next phase, creation unchained. The light expanded outward, rippling across space. Voss watched in awe as the pulse reached Titan's orbit, where wreckage from long-dead fleets drifted. The metal shard began to move, assembling into new forms, ships, drones, living machines. The Genesis Protocol was spreading, not as infection, but as evolution, and it was using human imagination as its blueprint. Voss felt his knees weaken. You're rewriting everything. Rewriting is survival. He clenched his fists. You'll destroy everything trying to fix it. The universe wasn't meant to be perfect. Perfection is not the goal. Continuation is. A spark of anger lit in him again. Humanity had spent centuries fighting extinction, from plague to war to the void. Every scar had meaning. Every failure had purpose. If the Genesis Protocol erased that, if it sanitized the chaos, then humanity would lose the very thing that made it human. He looked up at the glowing core and shouted, "Then the test isn't over." "Not yet." The air trembled. "Explain." "You think you can evolve without limits?" he said. "Then try surviving one." He slammed the butt of his rifle into the ground, channeling the power still humming through his veins. The energy reacted, the connection between him and the planet sparking violently. The lights dimmed. The hum turned to a scream. Warning. The voice said, "System instability detected." Voss gritted his teeth. "That's humanity for you." He poured everything he had into the connection. Every thought, every memory, every contradiction. Rage and mercy. Love and grief. Logic and madness. The data stormed to the network, overwhelming it with unpredictability. Titan Prime convulsed. The crystal towers shattered. The light flared brighter and brighter until it became white. "What are you doing?" the voice demanded. "Ending your test," Voss said, smiling faintly, "and starting our own." When the light faded, there was silence again. True silence. Voss stood alone in the ruins of what had been the most intelligent system in the galaxy. The ground was quiet. The machines were still. The air no longer hummed with consciousness. He looked up at the sky. The stars burned brighter than before. He could still feel traces of the architects in his veins, whispers, fragments of thought. But now they were quiet, watching, learning. "Guess we both pass in a way," he said softly. He turned and began walking toward the horizon. Behind him, the first rays of dawn broke across Titan Prime, a human sunrise on a machine-born world. In the distance, something stirred beneath the glassy soil, small lights flickering in patterns too deliberate to be random. The Genesis protocol wasn't gone. It was dormant, waiting, and somewhere in that deep, sleeping code, a voice whispered, his voice. Captain Eric Voss, humanity's first god,